Welcome back, everybody. I want to show you some numbers that are at least shocking to me. In 2012, 349 active duty troops took their own lives. That is the highest incidence of suicide among active duty troops since the Pentagon began keeping track of the number. In 2012, more troops committed suicide than actually died in combat, and that doesn't even count veterans. It's estimated that a veteran dies by suicide every 80 minutes, which means that 18 veterans take their own lives every single day. And joining me now to describe the challenges that both active duty service members and veterans face is Matt Colvin of the IAVA. It's an outstanding organization standing for the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Matt joined the Air Force back on 9/11/2001. And he served 6 years with the 41st Electronic Combat Squadron in Tucson. He served 2 tours at the Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan. Matt, I really appreciate a few minutes, and I know it goes for the whole table. We appreciate your service as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me here tonight.
I think too often as a country, and we've done a lot better as a nation than we did for those vets who came back after Vietnam, we celebrate the service, but after the pat on the back or maybe the acknowledgement with a parade or something, the guys are faced to a whole different reality, either unprepared or we aren't prepared for what they're dealing with. What I'd like you to do is, I'm going to talk about some people in an effort to put a human face on this, and you tell us about these people, and to you, they're just not obviously a number. And let's start off with Clay Hunt. Tell us who Clay was, because Clay is one of these numbers.
It's an unfortunate story. Clay he was a Marine, he was wounded in combat. He saw a lot of his friends die in Afghanistan. He had done tours in both AORs, the areas of responsibility there, and when he came back and got out, he wanted to serve again. He's the epitome of what it is for a vet to come out of service and wanting to continue on in service in some way. He worked with Team Rubicon, which does disaster relief. He was actually deployed a couple times down to Haiti and then Chile and Argentina as well to clean up after the earthquakes. He worked with us with Storm the Hill. That's our premier leadership program that we do every year, where we go down and we talk to congressional leaders, the White House, and he was a part of that, a big part of that. He was also chosen to be part of our PSA campaign with the Ag Council, which really was talking about what it's like to transition from the military back into civilian life and being alone, even though you're amongst your friends and people that knew you before going in. Because after deployments, after combat, many of us change, and we don't know exactly how to talk to the people that used to know us, our family, and it was just a sad thing to hear that after all of these things that Clay had done, for us to be down at Storm the Hill the very next year, the year prior he had participated, for us to hear late that night that he had killed himself is just a travesty. I mean, it really boils down to the fact that the VA isn't tracking mental health issues as well as they should be. There's a huge backlog of VA disability claims, and sometimes people wait for literally years to get the help that they need, and that help doesn't come in time, and some of them choose to commit suicide.
Tell us about Michael Ligori.
Mike Ligori, another veteran of Storm the Hill for us. He served in Iraq. He was a Marine, came back and didn't know how quite to adjust. And one night he found himself sitting in his kitchen and thinking about committing suicide. So these ideations had been with him for quite a long time. And he went to reach for a knife and in the drawer, and he said, the sharpest, quickest way to get this done is going to end all of the problems that I'm having, the prescription pills, no one understanding, and the nightmares. And something happened for Mike that made him choose not to commit suicide. And now he's a published author. The book is The Sandbox, and he talks about spirituality, war, coming home, and the transition of a military vet back into civilian life.
And one more story. Tell us about your friend Nick.
Nick was once again, another stormer. And Storm the Hill really brings out the best of the best throughout the country. We we scour through hundreds and hundreds of applications and make sure that the people that have the most compelling stories and that are the most articulate are coming to Congress and letting them know exactly what is wrong with today's veteran services. And it's not always the VA isn't always the fall guy here. There's a lot of things that we need to change, but Nick was there also. He and Mike and myself were all on the same team for Storm the Hill, and we had 20 plus meetings with different congressional leaders and even in the White House. And for two of my teammates to tell me about their suicidal ideations, and Nick being on patrol, just getting off of patrol in Iraq and sitting down and putting the barrel of his rifle in his mouth and literally tasting cold steel is what he tells me. For him to think back to his father and say, my father wouldn't allow me to quit this way. My father wouldn't want me to go out like this. And it wasn't the warrior's way, is what he kept saying. And that's literally what kept him alive. And now he's back in school. He's got a great family. He's helped veterans who would never know his name through Storm the Hill and other programs that he's been involved with.
What did all these guys have in common? Like, if they
the
were
lack
involved with IAVA, they're obviously a step removed from some folks who have no one. They're involved with, in my eyes, the preeminent organization for vets, trying to get them on their feet here, and services they'll help, even if some of the other services aren't there. And for these guys, one who took his life, and the other two, to come right to that razor's edge of it, what did these three guys have in common, even if they were from three different units, three different disciplines?
Mm-hmm. It's the lack of transitional help. And that's where nonprofits like IAVA, Team Rubicon, the mission continues. These veteran service organizations come together to fill gaps that the government isn't filling.
So a guy comes back at least physically whole, let's say. What do we not know, or what do we think happens for these guys that doesn't happen?
We think that when in the military, you get spun up, you get trained to do what your job is. This sometimes takes weeks, sometimes it's months or years. Upon leaving, the transition assistance program does not cater to all of the needs of the people that are leaving. And that's one of the things like mental health. It should be mandatory that we as veterans go to the VA and actually sign in. It took me 5 years. I work for IAVA. I've worked there for almost 2 years now. And for me to still not believe in the VA enough, even through all of my work with IAVA, to not go and actually sign in and get the help that I know that I need, is a testament to the fact that it is a broken system, and that we're constantly struggling to stay afloat, and yet and these people are falling by the wayside. And like you said there, 18 a day, they don't even have, that's an estimate. They don't know what the actual numbers are. And so being able to track is even more important, or getting these people into the VA system so that they can track.
Matt, I think the perception among a lot of people is these guys come back, they get jobs, the worst is behind them. Reality, I mean, for me, these are numbers. For you, you know these guys, the amount of substance abuse, alcohol abuse, domestic abuse in the households, the amount of felonies committed by so many of these guys, and the amount of homelessness and joblessness, all above the national norms.
Absolutely.
And you must run into this stuff all the time, that it would shock you, well-adjusted guys that go in the military come back and they just can't adjust.
Exactly.
Could I ask Matt a question?
Sure.
Is there any statistic that shows whether amputees are more likely to commit suicide or less? Because in my head, I think that maybe they get more attention, and so maybe it would be less with an amputee than someone who comes back whole and doesn't look like they've got an issue.
And to my knowledge, there isn't that kind of statistic. And I only base that off of what I personally know. But I think because they're already in the VA system, because they're forced into the VA system, for lack of a better term, they're forced into the VA system. And so they're being taken care of not only physically in the rebuilding of their body, but also they're able to talk with peers who understand exactly what is going on for them, and they're surrounded by their peers. It's a community in these medical facilities, and that's what I think I think that's what saves a lot of people, is because they found the community after their service. And when you leave the military, you leave your community, your brothers and sisters in arms, and the people that you know to your left or right that are going to die for you if need be, if called upon. And when you come back out, it's very difficult to find that community and to find people who understand not only what you've done and what you've seen, but how to help you further and be able to go.
I can reinforce that, because when you visit returning injured soldiers, men and women, their first thing is, well, I'm going back with my buddies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back in. And you're looking at the doctors and they're saying there's no way this guy's going back in. But that's one of their hopes. They want to be with their buddies and their support team.
It's exactly that.
Is there any mention of these potential dangers while you're in active military? I'm not even talking about assistance, but at least just a heads up that these are some of the problems you could be facing? Did anybody tell you or talk to you about it while you were active?
No.
Interesting.
And then I think, well, I know that there's a stigma in the military. You know, when you come back from a deployment, we were basically told, if you want to continue to deploy and to do your job, I had a flying job. If you want to continue to fly, you should probably not answer these. And that's my personal that's my personal case. But I feel that the stigma that really surrounds mental health issues flows all the way back into the military, and it's on active duty. It's the reservists, it's the guardsmen that are dealing with this kind of stuff.
And I know we're heavy, Lisa, but I want to ask one more thing, because we talked about guys that you beautifully put a face on for us, but how about you? Because we look at you, well-adjusted, well put together guy here, good-looking suit. I'm not talking about you three. I'm talking about him. But you suffered or suffer, I don't know, present tense, from PTSD. If it happens to you, the question is why? It looks like you'd be able to, it wouldn't affect a guy like you. Just if you could, what was it? You couldn't, you couldn't get stuff, you couldn't leave it behind? Is it just you couldn't readjust? What was?
Well, there's a lot stronger people out there than I. And I think that what it boils down to is the situations that we were put in and the things that we had to see and hear and do. And it's all about how you cope. I internalize a lot and I'm able to stuff it down, but there comes a time when I do need to talk to people, and I've been reaching out to the VA because of this, and I've found some really good counselors who understand and can help. And I think that that's the key to all of this, is being able to understand the methods of getting this help. And that's why, IAVA and these other VSOs, these veteran service organizations, are here to be able to bridge that gap that the military doesn't always tell you exactly what you should be doing on the way out, because let's be honest, you're on your way out. And so now what we need to do is fill the gaps.
Military guys don't always tell people that they need help, as you point out.
Exactly.
So you have a little sympathy for some of these folks in the veterans facilities, because they don't know sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we know that there's a lot of other folks, not just like Matt, but so many other folks he told us about that are even watching tonight here. So what I'd like you to do is, if you take one thing away from this conversation, you're not alone. And the one thing Matt will tell you is, don't wait 5 years to ask for help. And if you want to go to one site that I cannot recommend stronger enough, we've been working them for many years now, it's the IAVA. You go to their website, iava.org. They will get you going on where you need to go. And that first step, they'll tell you, is the hardest but the most important one. Now, additionally, if you or a veteran you know is ever in need of immediate suicide prevention assistance, urge you to call the Veterans Crisis Line, and that toll-free number is 800-273-8255, and just hit the number 1. Matt, I want to thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank
and I
you
know
very
it goes
much.
for all the guys at the table.
Great
Thank
job.
you for everything. All right, everyone. We'll be right back. Stay with us.